Hello everyone, welcome to Drinks and Mics, brought to you by Naira Metrics. I remain Ugo Dre, and I have with me here my fellow drinkers. And we got a special guest. I'm just going to allow Arnold do the intro.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, this is Arnold, in case you're just watching for the first time. This is him. This is him here.
This is me.
Arnold
This is
Green.
This is me.
And of course, I got Tunji right here.
Yeah,
Your guy himself.
Hi.
Arnold, introduce our guest, please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Excited about
No, I am.
Like your guy.
There are very few people in this industry that I listen to because I'm very stubborn and very opinionated. But at the same time, I can admit when I'm wrong, but I'm rarely wrong. Right?
Really?
So,
we observed that already. Yeah. No, but it's worse when you're drinking.
It is. No, but I can count on one hand the few people in this industry that I listen to, I pay attention to, and I learn from. And one of them, and I feel blessed and honored and privileged to be in his presence, is Mr. Samson Asimwede.
Thank you.
I've known Samson. Let me do a quick intro. Another intro.
Okay, drum roll.
I've known Samson from when he was an analyst at Deutsche Bank. Yeah. And we had the Bloomberg, Bloomberg group. It was like a bunch of black city traders and analysts. We had a group on Bloomberg before they banned Bloomberg groups, and then we moved to BBM, BlackBerry, and then we moved to WhatsApp. So I've known before BBM.
Wow, that's a history.
So analysts.
So what group was it? Was that like a Yahoo group or something? I think that was it then.
No, it was called African Markets.
African Markets. It had a name. It had a name.
On Bloomberg. It started as African Markets.
On the Bloomberg.
Wasn't it High Flyers, High Riders?
I can't remember what it was. It was basically black people that just have an interest in Africa. So people of African descent across assets and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a very good networking opportunity
really
because now I feel like I can call anyone in Dubai or in New York,
or even Benin Republic.
Or Benin Republic.
Yeah, you know.
Good
to have you, man.
Thank you. I know that put me under a lot of pressure. So
yes. You know, I've always wanted to ask you something though.
Sure.
So why did you come back to Nigeria? I mean, like, it seemed like you had a legend career outside Nigeria. Now that everybody's jackpot, you're here. In fact, you're spreading, you're investing everywhere. Like,
he is.
By the way, guys, this is a serial investor. This is the kind of person you want beside you if you're looking for money. Why are you still here, man?
It's to be honest, I don't have a direct answer. I had an itch. I think I was probably a victim of being promoted too quickly in the city. I started my career at Deutsche. I became VP in 4 years.
Wow, that was fast.
And then I moved to City. I liked what I did, but I didn't like the politics of working in a global investment bank.
Yeah, can imagine.
And when it got to the point where I started to manage teams and stuff, I realized that I had to become a lot more political. And being a Nigerian, raised in Nigeria, I didn't really understand British politics, so to speak. So I felt I was good at my job, but I felt I was really bad at managing upwards. And so because I got promoted quite early, I kind of thought that I couldn't spend the next 30 years doing this. And I wanted to do something different. And I had an itch. And myself and my partner, we discussed, and I decided to come and give Nigeria a try. Right?
And so far?
It's been good. Okay. I think the early years was very, very challenging.
How many years now have you been around?
So I think I resigned October 2018 from Citibank. They made me work my notice, so I couldn't leave until December. So I got back to Nigeria December 2018, but it took about a year to get my SEC licenses. So we started sort of investing in 2019. Yeah.
So you came in right at the top when, like, I would say top because at that time exchange rate was like 360. We had like $22 billion or so in capital inflows. At that time, I recall very well. And then, towards the end of 2019, that was when we started winding down all those high TVs
that's when I started thinking if it was the right decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm imagining. Because when COVID struck, you were like, man, should I have resigned?
And when you start an entrepreneurial journey, you realize that you burn through savings faster than you thought that
But also 2019, though, I just want to sort of give it another view on 2019 because I've known you for equities, right?
Yeah.
So you know Equity Market. I've known you as an EM equity guy.
Correct.
And then obviously moving to Africa.
Yeah.
When we were enjoying Africa and the equity markets, we were getting like $50 million day volumes in the equity market. 2019 was, and we were in the JP Morgan GBI bond index.
Yeah.
We were selling MSCI, Frontier, or maybe EM, and it was good times.
Yeah.
2019 though was so that's why I was saying I wouldn't call it the top because we left the index in 2015.
I think for the equity market, I would say the top was probably 2014.
Yes,
before the oil price drawdown. Because at that point, when you look at the data, we had about over 14 billion of foreign portfolio investment stock in the market. Right?
Yeah.
And that number went down to about 2 billion as at the end of 2023. So there was a significant amount of de-risking. But the top outside of 2008, which you could argue is an anomaly, was 2014. So it was a difficult time. Obviously, I was an equity guy, but the only way I felt I could survive in Nigeria was to sort of be a jack of all trade.
Okay.
So my business is sort of what I call a multi-asset manager.
Okay.
So we sort of invest across capital structure and across life cycles of businesses. Mainly focused on Nigeria, but we funded startups on the African continent or African diaspora and people who are solving global problems.
Okay.
That kept me busy. If I was just doing equity alone, I likely would have returned back to London.
And the moral of the story...
No, that's true.
The moral of the story is do not promote your people quickly.
So I've got some data for you. You always like facts.
I love facts. I
like facts. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So 2019 capital importation 23.7 billion. That's the highest ever.
Okay.
Hold on. 2018 it was 16.8
Keep
billion,
going.
and then 2020 dropped to 9.6.
But a lot of that flow was in fixed income.
Yes, it wasn't fixed
That's what I'm saying. It was when we were Shasha banking. Remember that?
But for me,
the Shasha banking period when we're basically was all carry trade at the time.
But for me,
that's what was happening. But towards the end of 2019, it's kind of dipped.
Yeah, but for me, the peak is when you're talking about 2010 to 2014. When there was a proper carry trade.
Of course.
And you had a proper mix of investors coming in. You had a bunch of Africa-focused asset managers sitting in Singapore, sitting in London, sitting in New York, and everybody wanted Africa. The economies of the... they went from the dark continent to Africa Rising.
And then means, and then we got into this means, and everybody was very bullish about it.
Next frontier, next 11. Yeah.
Africa Rising.
It
was a catchy phrase.
Good times.
Yeah, good times.
All right. We gotta move on. Right into the show. Good to see you. Good to have you here, Sam. I'm very pleased to have you. Honor, actually. So, guys, very busy week. Crazy week, but let's just start soft. I know you guys are not. I don't know where you guys are music fans though. I'm a music fan. I mean, and it was the Grammys last week. I know you didn't watch it.
Definitely didn't.
Really don't care. Tunji, I know he likes hip hop.
I was watching my Naira positions.
Everybody, I mean,
you're watching them dance.
I was watching my Naira positions.
I got young kids, and I mean, Gen Z's like things like this. But anyway, I just want to come from a different angle. Afrobeats again, and of course, we only have just one award. I had one award category.
That one, I know she won an award.
And she won.
Yes.
And of course, the entire social media was agog. Some people were upset because the Davido fans were not happy, and some of his, his enemies or people that don't like him, we're all at him. And actually, I was just going through this thing.
What happened with Davido? Sorry.
No, so Davido was nominated with Chris Brown for... one of the was one of the nominees.
Categories.
Yeah, one of the nominees
so
for the Afrobeat
you don't want to act like you don't know a lot about it. So just keep quiet.
I know.
Just know, because it's as if you don't know that there is a Biggie versus Tupac kind of whatever.
No.
But anyway, so guys, I was looking at it really and reading through all the tweets, and I'm like, my mind just popped. I'm like, wait a minute, like, why are we so fixated at Grammys and Afrobeats? And I'm like, you know what? Afrobeats have come a long way.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, are we missing out on something?
Investment opportunity.
Yeah, like if this is one of those, ideas or businesses that we export pretty well. And of course, you see these guys on social media, with all the glamour, and all the opulence, they spill out. These guys are filling stadiums. Are we missing out something? Sam, you're the investment guy. Are you going to invest in any of these guys anytime? A record label, an artist?
I have Well, firstly, I think the challenge is because the creative sector doesn't index well in the data. People miss the growth that has been in that
when
industry.
you mean index well, as GDP numbers,
GDP
right?
data.
Correct.
And I'm hoping the rebasing captures a little bit of this. Because, because that is one area of the economy that has grown phenomenally well. The problem, however, is that the monetization of that industry, from the little bit that I know,
It's tricky.
is well, not necessarily tricky. It's like it's not in African hands, right? So,
Yeah.
so the big labels,
Yeah.
the Ticketmaster guys and the concert guys. So I have tried to do a concert in Canada for one of the big 5 or big 6. I don't know. I don't want to mention his name because it didn't go too well because we got, I think they got a competing offer. But just to put in context, I think we're looking at basically paying $700,000 to the artist to do the concert, right?
To the artist.
Those are big numbers.
And what sort of ticket sales are you? Because you're based it on
So
revenue.
we modeled it. So there were 2 nights they were supposed to give us in Canada. I think Ontario and Toronto. I think there was a 15,000 venue and there was a 7,000 venue.
Okay.
We're looking at about $100 per ticket.
Okay.
That's pre-sponsorship. So the model looked very good.
Yeah, it does look good, actually.
So it was a short-term, 6 months stuff.
Okay.
But I think once we started the process, we've kind of initially swapped contracts. Some of these offshore people swooped in.
And they took it. So what, they paid him higher? They paid him or her?
What I heard, I can't confirm or deny, but from what I heard from the promoter that we were working with, I think they got almost 2x what we were willing to pay.
Interesting.
No kidding.
The artist for 2 nights.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just to put things in context of what.
I'm like the wrong career.
I don't think.
You know what it is. You hear these stories and you don't believe them.
Yeah.
Right, because you're like, no. How can you feel? How can you make your money back?
No,
but you look at ticket sales. And you look at size of stadiums or halls, whatever it is we have here, and then you think you won't. And maybe my mind just thinks Africa. So can African artists make money in Africa? And then
but you remember we did talk about this earlier on Drinks and Mics. It's the arenas where can you gather?
Yeah, we sort of mentioned it.
100,000 Nigerians that is safe.
That can pay $100.
So I think it's an exportable product. Unfortunately, I think the issues that plague the continent in terms of distribution of purchasing power across the population, it's real, right? So when you strip out corporate sponsorship from this event, it's very difficult to imagine that people are selling out and making returns just on ticket sales alone.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
African continent.
Exactly.
Ex-South Africa. When I talk about
Africa,
I like to...
So it's SSA ex-South Africa, because I'm sure Morocco has, especially after this FIFA coming to Morocco, and Egypt probably has, but SSA, ex-SA, I think, it's tough.
But there's, I think there's huge opportunity here. There are lots of ideas and monetization ideas because there's financing opportunity, especially when you have access to streaming revenues from some of these artists.
Yeah,
interesting.
I looked at a platform that was supposed to provide distribution for independent artists. They didn't scale, unfortunately. But it's definitely a growing part of the economy. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of data, and you really need to rely on...
What kind of data, though, do you need?
I would like to get good idea of streaming data in Nigeria, for example.
I thought those things
legitimate streaming
who
data.
pays for them, right? Because you might have streaming data, but most of the people who are paying are not in Nigeria, right? How do you securitize those revenues that are coming to the artist that you can then provide some sort of financing advance for, right? So a lot of questions, and there are a lot of really good industry people that I know are trying to answer these questions. But obviously, the industry has basically been formed almost organically. And to a large extent, it's chaotic outside of a few big labels that are very professional. So bringing order to that system, it requires sort of a system-wide effort, which I'm hoping that this administration can try and advance, as opposed to just independent small investors like us trying to.
But I've seen it in the past. I've seen like distribution companies come in, pretty much like put money on the table for an artist, pretty much like debt. like, okay, you're about to do an album, right?
The advances,
This is like 100K, and they take it back in ticket sales.
Yeah, so I've looked at that model as well. We've looked at that model, just looking at alternative investments, right? So providing debts for a show for an artist. But for me, the problem came when looking at everything. It's the ticket sales. It's the size of whatever it was it a hall or whatever it is they chose, and the numbers just didn't look realistic. Because I don't know the industry enough to go out and do my numbers and my research. I'm hoping that the artists and the artist people actually
because you have those numbers.
But numbers, because I'm looking because debt isn't cheap.
Yeah,
right. So I'm not cheap, but it's something that we looked into. And for me, the ticket sales, it was just an issue. But this is an West African artist performing in West Africa. But
I think it's still going to what he's saying. It's an exportable product.
So guys,
I think that's just the way to look at it.
I think there are two apologies for bumping in. There are two sides to this. So you can invest in the artist themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm coming. So you can invest. That sounds like what you're saying.
No,
hold on a second. Isn't that what
I
I'm saying?
think said in a concert that an artist
Also, exactly.
I can't manage an artist.
Apologies. Let me rephrase it. So you're basically investing in the business of the artist. So whether it's a concert or you're securitizing their album releases or record sales and you're giving them money up front. So one way or the other, you're investing in your artists. So that's one way to look at it. Now, what about the infrastructure play? So I've spoken to some record label owners here, some of the guys who did successful shows last year, 30 December, and they're like, look, it could have been a lot bigger if we had bigger venues. And so we don't have infrastructure, you don't have good lighting, you don't have good stage, you don't have good sound systems. So aren't there opportunities in those areas?
Yeah, but these are big ticket transactions. I understand that the guys behind the Palm they've commissioned I think 12,000 capacity venue just right behind that. So that should be very positive.
Yeah, I heard about that.
There is huge opportunities to own what I call shovels, right? So the infrastructure side of it, right? But again, you have to take the risk, right? And I don't think there's that level of risk capital that is available that is directed towards.
The problem is that a few people in the past have done those kind of risk taking and been burnt terribly. Terribly.
I mean,
terribly.
But the industry have evolved.
Exactly.
Well, right?
That's what I was going to say.
But the thing is,
demand is huge now.
The thing is, how do you know? Because yes, demand is huge, but demand still. So, for instance, like sound. If you want proper sound, there are Nigerian guys who are good, but you most likely want to look offshore to South Africa or outside to get you the right kind of sound. Yeah, our people are emerging, but then you would think that it would make sense for somebody to just invest, a shit ton of money. I don't know if we can say that. A lot of money. You can invest a lot of money into equipment, sound, and all the rest, and get the revenue coming in locally. But then there's also the issue that I am the artist. I want to do a show. Yes, you now have equipment in Nigeria, but do I trust you with my sound? But I trust the South African guy. Right? I've known him for my last 4. So now I'm sitting on a ton of expensive equipment that is burning a hole in my pocket, right? And I probably, use debt to collect it. Arnold is buzzing my phone. Like, dude, we said we're going to do this, and so those people that have been burnt are the challenge to any new person bringing in capital into that space. Except, of course, there is some way the person that is bringing capital into equipment can tie into the record labels, the distribution companies, tie into other, so that it's sure that if I bring in this equipment, you guys will use me.
Okay.
Okay, so just to end this, someone told me recently that, I was having this argument with the person, and it's like, you guys just like speak too much grammar. Like, Shebi, House on the Rock does this experience at TBS and they fill up the entire place. Like, why can't these guys fill up places? Like, why can't they do it?
Jesus.
You have to call Jesus.
Jesus. It's Jesus that is behind that.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's leave it to Jesus. All right, so we'll move on. During the week, Donald Trump fired, of course, the first set of salvos. So he imposed huge, beautiful, lovely tariffs. And like, that's the way he kind of describes his things. Beautiful, it's huge, it's big.
Love
tariffs.
Love it.
On Canada, Mexico, and China. And then a day later, I think, Canada rescinded, according to him, they struck a deal with Canada, and first of all with Mexico and then Canada, and then they sort of agreed to freeze those
for 30 days.
Yeah. Those tariff hikes for 30 days. But China is still, man.
Yeah, China's still on.
You want to show me, I'll show you back. But I think
Yeah.
talks are going on. Guys, I just want to get your views on this. Maybe let me start with you, Arnold.
What are my views?
Yeah,
What are
like,
my options?
Yeah, like I mean, you've seen tariffs go on. Now rescinded. I think we talked about it at some point, and we thought maybe
Yeah,
he
because he
go
was
through
talking
with
about
this.
it for a while, right? So, I mean, I'm going to speak as a market participant because that's my perspective. So I think a lot of us were already shifting and trying to figure out how this affects everything we are and everything we hold. So on the macro side, whatever countries you're exposed to, and then on the micro side, and then Nigeria, right? So it was the move, right? So what does it mean? There's a 25% tariff on Canadian imports and Mexican imports. Canada's with oil, steel, and aluminium and a few other things, right? So, and then what? US? Does it mean US inflation? What is it? I think we did talk about it because we talked about inflation. Yeah. So I mean, what's your question? So what's my view? Is the pause going to stay longer? Or is it no?
Well, you spoke by it.
So I was shocked when I found it on the 31st that it was definitely going to start on the 1st. I thought that there was going to be a deal before the 1st. So on the 1st, it was like you woke up on Saturday morning and it's happening. So then everyone's calling everyone. But then when the pause came in and the pauses come in and it's like, okay, this is what I expected.
Yeah.
So it feels like a strong arm. And I don't like to go into politics. So for me, it's what do you do? So are you expecting the hikes to go on or not? So how everyone is positioned, I think, is this hikes are going to happen and take it and then position yourself from there.
So I have been struggling a lot with the zero-sum approach that the US have taken to balance of payments problems.
Okay.
I think we should take a step back to understand what does a trade deficit mean. A trade deficit is basic mathematically is the difference between your savings and your investments.
Yeah.
So the US runs a large trade deficit because its investment rate is very high due to what is happening in tech and infrastructure and stuff, but the savings rate is very low. So de facto, you will run a trade deficit. If it's not with China, it's with somebody else, right? So in order to solve that deficit problem, you need policies to raise your domestic savings rate, not a trade war, right? So I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Secondly, the US dollar is a reserve currency, which means by definition, it needs to supply dollars to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And you can either supply dollars through trade or you can supply dollars through investments.
Or through debt.
If you don't do that, what happens is that the dollar strengthens extremely rapidly.
Yeah.
And that threatens US stability.
And that's what's going on now, right?
Yeah.
So and these tariffs are not helping.
So the US brilliantly executed a global world order since World War II that largely benefited US establishments and US elites. You could argue that some people in the Rust Belt were net negative and losers in this process in the middle of the country. So for me, the puzzle is that why would the US want to unwind a global trading system that it benefits a lot from?
And that
I don't think so. I totally understand what you're saying, and I get it, and I agree. But I don't think Trump is seeing it from that perspective. Right? His
He's not,
perspective
but someone smart enough should be telling him.
No. So we talked about this off camera. There is a general world belief that this guy is not very smart, but I feel there's some method to the madness. And my thinking is this. I think a lot of what he's doing right now is posturing to be heard. I feel America.
It doesn't need to go this far to push it to be heard.
No. So look at what he did with Canada and Mexico. For instance, Canada and Mexico. He's not so gone that he's without reason. So, for instance, the Canada-Mexico issue was immigration and fentanyl. On the Canadian side, hey, can we solve this fentanyl coming into the U.S.? On the Mexico side, can you secure the borders? And both sides says, okay, we'll listen to it, right? So he's not that gone that he's not listening to reason. Mm-hmm. But I feel somehow he felt he needed to make a big splash. Mm-hmm. And he has done that. If there's anything, the US right now is at the center of global attention. Whether you like it or not, whether you're afraid, whether you like Trump, whether you dislike Trump, the US is at the center of global conversations.
Are you suggesting this is an attention seeking
move? Too much for that.
But then the question that you have
not attention really, because you said something about the US since World War II have been able to structure a global economy that has favored them largely. If you look at the last 6, 7, 8 years, that has continuously tilted towards China. That global landscape has it's not as if China is winning, but it's continuously moved in the direction of China.
Yeah, but that the US dollar being an FX reserve is a different conversation.
No.
Right?
Yes, it's a different conversation. But the thing is, eventually it gets there. No, it doesn't just go one day.
I don't see a world.
Remember
I think the US took advantage of World War II and all these countries needing help and needing financial aid or whatever it is and needed to be bailed out. Yeah. We're not there.
I think the question
we're not there. It's the war bonds, right?
Are trade deficits a bad
thing?
No.
I think that part, honestly, that's why I think there's method to the madness, because if the layest person understands that the trade deficit conversation doesn't make sense, then the president should have somebody to tell him that, dude.
So I used to think
trade deficit conversation is not.
But
something
I have gone to look at a lot of Trump's. Obviously, this frustrates me because it has an impact on the dollar. And by definition, has an impact on capital flows into Nigeria.
Yeah,
and
yes,
my,
of course.
My view is really around trying to figure out macro
where
stability
capital flows are coming from.
Right?
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time thinking about this thing, and I have gone to literally watch Trump speak on economic issues way back up to the 1980s.
Okay.
This is not a sudden wake up and realization. This is his worldview.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is his view.
That America is being gamed.
It's being gamed, right? This is his view.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know to what extent is a carrot and stick, bring somebody to the table.
That's what I'm saying. It's not attention speaking.
He did this with North Korea, though. So let's not forget, he did this with North Korea. Now, look at the tension between... Remember when he came into office the last time? North Korea was threatening, was doing tests, missile tests every other day. After he came into office, first called the guy the Rocket Man, I have a bigger button, It's the tension has eased up. He had face-to-face conversations, it's eased up. I feel to a large extent this is his own way. Like I said earlier, if it was an Obama, he would do this same thing in a different way, But I feel what he's doing right now is in the best interest of the US.
So is this a negotiation tool?
Exactly. I feel it is. It is to what end?
To what end? Very good question, Sam. And then I guess to know to what end, you tend to ask yourself, what exactly does he want in return? And for Canada, according to him, is immigration, right? Immigration and fentanyl. That's what he wants. So it's not like he has a problem with the trade itself.
Yeah.
Even though what was very funny when he was signing the executive order and essentially castigating the trade deal and wondering who signed that trade deal, I saw a video that he was actually the one who signed that trade deal in his first term. Go watch that video.
No, because they renegotiated the NAFTA.
The NAFTA during his tenure. So he actually signed that trade deal. So I guess maybe this is just some kind of attention. But beyond that, guys, I was looking at his anger with countries that the US is running into a deficit with, and Nigeria may not really feature that much, but we're among the 48 or so countries that US runs a trade deficit with. And I was looking at the numbers recently, and it's quite humongous. Even though it's dropped now, but we have been running a trade surplus in our favor with the US for years. So
because we gave them oil and they gave us nothing. And then they stopped giving us the oil, so it became a small deficit. We are not big trade. Frankly, in Trump's life, we don't matter.
Should we be bothered?
We don't.
To be honest, I don't want
on that
Trump.
trade
I don't
deficit
want
conversation
Trump to
with
care about
on
us.
us. Yes.
I don't want Trump to care
that.
about us.
But his eyes
for
on
me,
South
what
Africa
matters,
right now.
for me, what matters is the
I think
capital
that's
flows
more
from that.
racial.
No, I think that's more.
I think
it's
it's
even more
Elon
BRICS. I think
it's Elon
and
Musk.
BRICS.
Elon
I
Musk
think
and BRICS.
there's a racial
BRICS.
element to it.
Yes,
Apartheid, Elon Musk, and then there's
Land
obviously
grabbing and
land
all that
grab.
stuff.
The feeling of like, I know that the people that Trump has are multiple times smarter than I am, and so I have to always be humble around trying to understand what he's trying to achieve. But to be honest, I don't get it. Right, like his view on anti-immigration, while it's. I mean, there's this thing where economists say about the idea where Naira in the US seems a lot lower than. So Naira is basically the unemployment rate, which when you hit inflation accelerates. Right? And one of the puzzles of the last post-COVID is how low unemployment has been, but yet inflation has been decelerating. Right? And a large explanation to that is the reservoir of labor that comes from the border on a periodic basis.
But you know the thing.
So should they be worried about that? Is that why they're worried?
So what I'm concerned about is when I see tariffs, which in my mind are inflationary, especially the energy tariffs in Canada, that boggled my mind because the infrastructure that supplies energy from Canada to the US is captive. So there's no alternative. You can't reroute it to
So
the
you don't see what the benefits of the tariff
I don't
is.
see what the benefit of the tariff
It's going to hit the US more.
And when you look at steel and the steel consumption in America, and you think locally you can't actually fit, you can't match.
So these are
you can't. So why are you
doing it?
steel? Yes.
So why are you doing
Aluminium,
it? So
why?
My point is, a lot of these things really aren't fights for the sake of fights. I honestly do believe that, mind share for the US has reduced over time. And I feel that a lot of what he's doing is posturing for, just negotiations. They need to do a lot of things, especially even this AI conversation. He's plugged himself into it.
Yeah.
And generally, it's the fact that America needs to be first. And yes, it might seem ludicrous to a lot of people, but it speaks to his power base. But it also speaks well for America. At the end of the day, they say, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you're still amongst the stars. So all of this, so look at it, this Canada-Mexico thing, at least it's gotten people to the borders. At least it's reduced the issues.
But you know what's funny? That was what he's just gotten is what exists before.
So this is
conversation about
AI, but I have a comment to make.
There's still retaliations to talk about where these countries are now going to retaliate. China already.
No,
but China.
Apart from China,
Okay,
I think the Canadian one was really silly.
But China
what do you say?
What's energy and LNG?
He had this thing
LNG,
where he was talking about it. He was asked about
coal,
it. Then he
LNG.
goes, I want to talk.
Tungsten.
I think you guys.
That's what I'm saying. Tungsten.
You guys ignore the significance of that.
Yes.
So China dominates the downstream value chain for rare earth metals in terms of rare earth metal refining, lithium. Tungsten, things you need in chips, things you need in phones, missiles,
in phones,
in phones.
Yes,
that was a warning shot, frankly.
From who?
From China.
Chinese, of course.
That was a warning shot.
10% of tungsten? Is it 10%, 15% of tungsten?
Yeah. And the funny thing was that the Chinese premier just put it out there. They made too much noise. They've got
they've also put tariffs on those. They've also put tariffs on that to make it more expensive for companies like Nvidia to produce. At the end of the day,
who wins?
It's one thing is clear, and I was telling Arnold before. It reminds me of the U.S.-Russia tension in the 90s. where it was about, who's going to go to space first, nuclear weapons. 60s, yeah. Then it came up, so it was like, who's going to go to space? That tension is now building US-China. But it is different. It's now not about annihilation. It's more about economic dominance. And the US is not sleeping. They basically are awake to the fact that China is coming for their meal.
It's not how it used to be now. These other countries also have arms.
It's not about arms. It's now economic. It's not economic.
I don't mean arms in arms, but I mean arms in that sense of the word, as in they're ready to actually fight this battle.
But you don't expect them to lay it down.
I'm sure you guys
easy.
discussed DeepSeek.
We had a whole...
Are you guys segueing into that now?
Please,
I just want to say one
Samson
thing.
missed that episode,
because for me,
I've been dubbed pro-US on DeepSeek's conversation in the comment section.
Let's allow Samson.
Let Samson cook.
No, because
let him cook.
like a lot of people said, oh, this is Russian, and this is China-US equivalent of Sputnik. If you guys remember, Sputnik was the space race, and everybody thought that the Russians were kind of behind technologically, and then they sent a vessel to the moon, and that created an arms race. I think DeepSeek is even more fundamental than that, right? Because, and for me because I'm a Western educated boy, so I was ingrained in what you call Western ideals, democracy, free system, and watching what is happening in communist China versus capitalist democratic US, it's very embarrassing, frankly, for the US, right? Because they've basically tried to monopolize AI technology to achieve economic dominance. Boom! And then the Chinese said, you know what? Let's open source this thing. It's worse than an arms race, because the arms race basically led to two people building weapons in secret. China is like, you know what?
Let's do it open.
Do it open. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
The US cannot afford to lose this war. This war on AI, the US cannot afford. I'm not saying they cannot afford to lose. They will invest. They will put everything behind it to ensure that they win, whatever it takes. Because whoever wins the AI war wins economic power into the next decade
But you then have a country that is democratically ideal. It's free, quote unquote, having a closed technology system. And then you have a communist autocratic system, basically democratized access to large language models.
To capital and everything.
Oh, yes. I can see the oxymoron in that.
So for me, you can see why I'm a very confused person at the moment.
It is confusing.
All right, guys, we gotta go. We gotta move. All right, so we now move back home, Nigeria, right? A lot of stuff happened during the week as well, and so I want us to touch on a few things. So we'll start first with Dangote Refinery. I know you're a big man, you don't buy fuel. I did hear that he's reduced fuel price again. Marketers have said, they're not reducing. And it kind of looks like what I noticed.
What's the end game?
I don't even know why I'm looking at that.
Exactly. Thank you. Because I'm not the big man.
People that at least are still rolling with streets. So I don't know whether you've noticed. I did hear that there's one filling station. I don't know, it's MRS. Yeah. So the driver was telling me that I won't go MRS, go buy the fuel. I'm like
my driver doesn't know that. I need to tell him that.
My driver is only allowed to buy from MRS.
He's only allowed to buy from under instruction.
Your driver is busy.
So wait. No, he doesn't. Does he know? He doesn't tell me to go to MRS. I don't know.
No, you have to know this. The fuel lasts longer. I think it's cleaner. So is
it really happening?
It is. Like, I have noticed it. And obviously, it's just me. And I'm an anecdote. And it's just me. It's me and my partner. So we've both noticed, right? That actually the fuel does actually last longer. It's cleaner. It's blue. It's not pink, right?
So this is not entirely new. This is not entirely
No, I didn't know this. So this is
new. So petrol stations in between themselves. There's always that dichotomy. There's one you go to, you buy the same amount of petrol, it just depletes quickly. It's always been there, and the
is it the ones that put air in your car?
So I don't think it's about air. I don't think it's about air. I think it's more the
quality of petrol.
Exactly. So I'm trying not to go into details because the importers bring it from different sources. It's not all petrol coming from one source, and
they
all
blend it.
petrol,
Yeah.
all petrol is not petrol. It's it's blended with this, blended with that. So where you get it from is also important to how it basically combusts in your engine.
So let me kind of shift this a bit. You've seen someone heavyweight like Dangote take on NNPC and some of this so-called cabals. You've seen subsidy removal. A lot of people didn't like it. Looks like market forces is working.
A lot of people didn't like subsidy removal.
Yes, I mean, like, go to the streets or Twitter.
No, I think that was
one of the best decisions we've
that
made.
People don't like it on the streets.
Yeah,
exactly. But a lot of people don't like it.
But the divide now.
They haven't dragged you before.
No, but I think obviously because we're in a low trust society, people believe that the savings that is going to be made is going to be spent on subsidy is going to be reflected the way. I would actually counter, and this is counter narrative. Mm-hmm. For me, the data, unless they are doctoring the data, I always go to the data, right? This government is a lot more frugal than the narrative suggests.
I love this. This is why we're here. This is why we came.
This is why we came.
And I've had this conversation with him. So I want
you love this.
I've had this conversation with him. So
I was one on the smart. Oh my God.
We've had this debate. So let's Samson.
I haven't seen the full year
So
numbers.
what
I've seen nine. I've seen 9.
Define frugal.
So I've seen 9-month numbers.
Okay.
Of expenditure of the federal government, right? And when you prorate expenditure on a month-on-month basis, right, the total expenditure is tracking 27% lower than budgeted.
So what?
The only large line item
or inefficient?
Well, the only line item that is significantly higher is dollar-based debt service cost, and that's because it's denominated in naira. So go and look at, you could argue that because of lack of ways and means, they couldn't deficit finance. But when I compare this government to the past government, and I look at expenditure patterns, and one could argue that obviously the capital side of the budget have suffered because implementation has been very, very low. Yeah. But when I actually look at the budget, right, I'm surprised as to how well this government has controlled expenses.
Could it also be inactivity?
That's what I'm wondering. What aspect of expenditure? Is it recurring capital?
Could it also be inactivity?
What inactivity?
So obviously capital
expenditure, so-called positive variance is a failure.
No, capital.
If you don't meet capital expenditure spend, then you haven't done well.
But that is a trend that has pretty much existed and predates.
But this has been one of the worst, though.
This was bad. But again, it's because there's no free money. Yeah. There's no ways and means. Yeah. So if you don't raise the revenue,
you have to find another way.
Ogodre, I just realized something.
What's that?
This conversation is drawing us into a vortex of politics. Let's leave it.
No, but this is budget. This is budget. It's not finance. No, it's not politics. It's not budget.
I'm not political in any way.
You're just talking about
actually, I would say it on camera. I didn't vote for this administration, right? Because I was tired of this sort of politics and I wanted a difference for Nigeria, right? Yeah. However, when you look at the decision-making process so far, with the reforms on the exchange rate, with the removal of petrol subsidy, with how disciplined, I understand, some of my ex-clients were telling me how surprised they were that the delegation that went on the Eurobond roadshow was 10 people. Yes. Have you been to a Nigerian Eurobond before? They will open up the conference room.
Isn't that a one-off? There were some last year and it was actually
the point, again, I think I will wait for full year, right? That's why I don't want to get too excited because they may have backloaded the expenditure and then when full year comes out, then I will have to temper my optimism. So I have to wait for September, January. Yeah. But when I look at the data, the part where it's been counter-narrative for me is how well anchored expenditure has been.
But that's where I disagree though, because if you go look at the breakdown of the budget itself, right? Recurrent expenditure is typically salaries, overheads, and most of it is actually salaries. Yeah. So not meeting recurrent expenditure spend, as far as I'm concerned, is not that you're efficient or you're prudent. I don't think so. That's where I kind of disagree.
But we have money. But we do.
That's
have
where I
money,
kind of
though.
disagree.
Where's the money from?
No, but to be fair though, what other angle that I want to look at?
Okay.
What other angle is I have also noticed, and this is data. 2023, we seem to have met net revenue targets, which is quite surprising because we hardly meet revenue targets. And of course, you could allude that was due to the depreciation that we had in 2023. And 2024 as well, it appears that we're likely going to go past revenue target again. Now, here's what's interesting. The president's announced that he's going to increase the 2025 budget to what's that figure? From 49.7 trillion, which is a record, to 54.2 trillion.
Is it a record in dollar terms though?
Maybe not. No, not a record.
You know we said it here.
Cheers for that. Is it a record in dollar terms?
You know we said it here.
I don't know. Tuji wants go big or go home.
Yeah, go.
Here's the reason. He says he got revenue boost. 1.4 trillion from FIRS, which is taxes.
Yeah.
He got 1.2 trillion from customs, which is, you know what that is. And then 1.8 trillion from GOEs, GOAs, or government-owned enterprises or agencies.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge boost. And rather than use that money to reduce the deficit, he's kind of think it's better to
just
increase
spend it.
Yeah.
Is it a wise decision, guys?
So the problem is that there are significant social cost to reforms. And you just alluded to the fact that there's not a lot of headroom in the budget, right? There's a lot of work to be done on food inflation. That requires spending a lot of money.
On what?
On seeds,
even just
contractors,
on
route to market,
agriculture
fertilizers, fertilizers.
They're all in the budget.
See, we are finance people. We don't want them to spend, right?
Exactly.
For me, But for me,
we don't want them to spend, but spend what you have. We're still running 13.3 trillion deficit. Sam, aren't you worried about that? I mean,
I am not worried about it. I am not worried about it. What I'm worried about is what that deficit is being spent on. So if that deficit was spent on infrastructure and we could see the infrastructure and it was infrastructure that could create productivity.
But there's infrastructure. Are you not seeing roads? Are you not seeing rails? Blue line, red line. There's going to be green very soon. There's one going from this Lagos Calabar Expressway. You guys haven't been there?
With deficit reduction, in my opinion, will only be achieved when you have strong economic growth.
How do you get stronger economic growth?
In the middle of a reform process that has been very painful to your citizens, demanding deficit reduction in addition is basically confining yourself to a spiral of low growth.
Okay, but Samson, as much as I love you and I
so
respect you, let me throw a spanner in that one. In an economy that you are reforming, should you be spending?
Yes,
but who spends?
Wait,
because all of us.
And what do you spend? Should we talk about your debt servicing?
I know. I'm beginning to notice that the whiskey guys are these gin guys.
No.
Should we talk about debt servicing? And should we talk about are we worried about debt?
Okay.
Now I want to hit Samson with it because he's our guest today, right?
Yeah.
So, first of all, what was my first question? In an economy that you're reforming, where you're cutting your excess, you're cutting the fat, you're trimming the fat. Should you be spending? Should you be increasing your budget deficit? And aren't you worried about debt servicing?
Which is now more than capital expenditure, by the way.
Should we be worried about the cost of funds?
Because debt service is now higher than capital expenditure.
Exactly. So
shouldn't be worried about that. That's the question, right?
That's the question.
Yeah, we're trying to see how to respond to that.
So the
shouldn't be worried. Let me get the question again.
Please.
Okay.
Shouldn't be worried about what?
Debt service is higher than capital expenditure in your 2025 budget. Fact.
Yeah.
Are you not worried about that?
And so,
how are you gonna pay?
And so
you can't pay back.
That's your response.
This is my default worries.
Can I
express my default worries? Okay. Because we saw this in Ghana, by the way. We saw this in Ghana, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I think we are much better placed than Ghana. With all due respect. I'll say two things.
Okay.
Right. One is the removal of petrol subsidy. And a lot of the onshore licensing and asset calculation that has happened means, and if you go and look at the data, rig counts are up significantly in the Delta. So the flow through from oil, and oil revenue has been underperforming for a very long time, right? And so oil GDP has gone.
Yeah.
It started going back up, but it's basically collapsed, right? Like
It has.
mid-single
Exactly.
digits, right? So I think, right, you're going to see upside surprise in oil revenue, right? Largely because the
Based
flow,
on what? No, but oil production hasn't done that much, or 1.4 to 1.5.
Rig counts are up.
rig counts are up.
That's a
right?
fact.
So I'll give you an example.
How much?
MNPU, right? Which is the asset that Seplat acquired. At the time when they made the announcements, that was a 220 barrels a day asset. At the time the transaction was concluded in December, I think that has gone to about 130, 140 a day. That's basically lack of investment.
Yeah.
You put in some rigs and
But you've got it
to 130.
but
so
it's halved.
Yeah.
It's halved. So where's the upside surprise? Sorry.
the point is when you get the rigs in, because these are fields that you know has those assets, right?
Okay.
These are fields that you know.
So you just got to invest. You just have to invest in
But
it.
these guys have spent a lot of money acquiring this asset. Do you think they're just going to just leave it?
Yeah.
Right? There are quite a number of those onshore assets. So that's one. So your volume, right? Your volume the volume portion of your terms of trade is in oil, I think is positive, right? I don't know what price is because I don't know what Trump is going to do, but we can have a debate on that, right? The second is that your pass-through of that revenue to your fiscal budget has improved because of the removal of petrol subsidy.
Okay. I see that actually.
Right?
Yeah,
So you're likely going to see an upside surprise in oil revenue in 2025
But we went
or
through
2026.
2024
Well, my
without
problem.
petrol subsidy.
So
Pardon?
we went through 2024 without petrol subsidy.
Well, we still
So that
have...
revenue hike we saw, was it an
We
upside?
did.
Because I kind
So
of
the
thought
revenue
we'd have
that you
seen
saw,
from
the revenue that
expenditure
you
side.
saw largely in fact, right, is largely a function of FX translation
Exactly.
effect,
So
right?
the savings would have been in expenditure.
Explain.
But we didn't meet. So my point is that the subsidy removal, even though subsidy is usually off budget, right? You probably would have seen in expenditure, which means you would have spent more in capital expenditure and recurrent expenditure.
I don't think we
because
saw
you removed
much
subsidy.
benefits from subsidy removal in 2024.
Exactly. No, we didn't.
2024. I think in 2025, they're going to
now.
I'll give you another data, right?
Okay.
And this is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's anecdotes, right? And it might be right, it might not be wrong. So one of my biggest puzzling issues when it comes to Nigeria is when you look at your current account, right? 9 months, that's what we have data for 2024. We had a current account surplus of about $13 billion. That's 8 to 9% of GDP, right? And my paradox, of course, is that typically when you see countries run that level of current account surpluses, you have very strong growth in reserves. Yeah. But when you strip out FPI flows and swaps, reserve growth ambition was not very strong.
Yeah.
So I've been scratching my head to understand, okay, why? Why is this happening? So a few smart people that I've spoken to are like, well, errors on emissions was high, right? And very likely, because imports have collapsed, right? In Q1 2022,
imports have dropped.
In Q1 2022, we used to import about 22 billion a quarter. As at the Q3 numbers that we saw, that number is about just shy of 14 billion.
Because of petrol.
There'll be massive contraction in goods import, including petrol.
And access to FX as
and
well.
access to FX. So the argument that people are making is that, okay, reserves have not been accruing, right? Because imports have been understated, right? And so that's why you have large errors and omission. I have a view, although I'm struggling to find data to corroborate this view, that the reason why you have large errors and omission is the overstatement of PFI-related PMS demand.
I mean, I've heard that before.
Talk me through that.
I've heard that before.
No, because think about it, right? We have, under the NNPC regime of petrol subsidies.
That's corruption.
That's why I just don't do that.
We
said that in the mic. No, talk me through that. You said that in the mic. You said that's corruption, basically.
I didn't say that. I hope you got that. I didn't say that. I have to quote that. Exactly.
That's what I said. Unfortunately, you get what I was trying to do.
Sam just put it in.
You speak English.
I was like, what does it mean?
You speak English to break the rest of us that don't understand corruption. For the rest of us that don't understand corruption, talk me through that. I just said that's corruption, basically. Because I was trying to, and then you laughed, and I'm like,
I think the only thing that's going to prove that to me this year is now that subsidy is gone. Let's see. I want to see what happens.
Let's see.
All
right. But finally,
we got a segue.
I never see where there's an issue. Yes, it is true. Our repayments are higher than our capital expenditure.
Yeah, we need to worry about our debt service.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
I
And then this
agree.
number's going higher,
But the
guys.
thing
Also now, I mean, these guys, think about it. They are 10 trillion of entity.
Yeah, so they have to
that
make
needs
it
be
worth
refinanced
your
this
while.
year.
They have to make it
and
worth
they
your
were
while.
issued last year at
Yeah.
20-something%. So this year you are refinancing 13 trillion, and then on top of that you are adding 13
Yeah.
trillion of new
Yeah, to make it
financing.
worth your
On
while.
top of that you have another 5 trillion of
Yeah,
bond
but how are you
repayment.
gonna
So that's
how are you
about
gonna
30
pay that
trillion.
back?
But
So
shouldn't
for
we
me,
be
it's-
worried, bro?
I think at some point we
huge
need to.
interest
Let's
rate.
be honest. I know I think sometimes I
what
feel like we're
we
too
should
close
be
to the
finding
story.
is who
What
can find
is
us
that?
more money.
Okay, Ogo.
Who can get us more
See,
money? We need more money.
In finance, right? And this is not a Nigerian issue. This is global.
Yeah.
We extend and pretend.
Yes.
Find out.
You know what they call it? They call it kicking the can down the road. We kick the can down the road.
We need to bring him because honestly, he's
I
saying
think we
everything.
found out number
He's
4,
saying
guys.
everything I've been saying.
I think
Everything you've been saying.
Everything I've been saying, but
TG.
you guys are now getting it because
He's using data. He's using data.
This is gene.
This is
This is what happens when you take gene. Let's just move
so
on,
by
guys.
the way, we're both
You
drinking
both
gin.
are.
Let's move on.
I realize.
Let's move on. That's why we're gin and juice. Anyway, guys, so during the week as well,
Okay.
I mean, I was pretty happy with what I saw.
Okay.
The Naira strengthened. I told you
here we
guys
go
last
again.
week, you guys that were, bearish Naira.
Now
So I love this
Hold on
conversation
now,
coming up.
let me
Okay, sorry.
land.
He's
Yeah,
not-
I love this
he's
conversation.
trying to
Sam
do
said something on the WhatsApp group.
Kai.
Just kidding. Yeah,
So the
sorry.
Naira was bullish.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, just for the
Let me calm
records,
down.
they are bearish Naira. I'm
mean,
bullish
no.
Naira. Hold on now.
Wait.
I mean, they are
This is nairametrics. This is nairametrics. So we're long Naira. We're
Do not
naturally no, but we live in
misrepresent
Nigeria, so we're long
our
Naira.
stance. Do not
Listen,
misrepresent our
let me just
stance.
say something.
You asked us buy,
We're
hold,
long
sell.
Naira by nature.
You said
of,
buy, hold, sell.
Yeah.
On as at the data of last week when we were doing the recording, the data pointed to sell.
and it still does.
It still does.
No, but
Anyway, guys,
Sorry, the data that pointed to sell. What is in the data?
sorry, Sam. Naira was strong. Last
Answer
week.
that
Hold on, guys.
question,
Let's.
No.
Naira was strong. Naira was strong.
what data, Tunji?
Naira.
No, but okay.
Hold on, Naira appreciated during the week, and then during the week we
You're
also
taking
saw.
too long. You're taking too long.
Now,
Just say speak.
we
guys.
also
You're
saw-
taking too long.
We also
get
saw
it.
the
very
CBN
chance.
sell to BDCs $25,000, and I also heard that it's $25,000 per BDC. So that also looks like it's going to feed into the exchange rate stability that we're all seeing and that we all love.
Yeah.
And I just want to hear the views.
I did
of
not
the
know, but I
gentlemen
think
here.
the
So
guest
we will
should
start.
lead.
Let's just allow
The
Sam
guest
to
should
lead.
lead. Yes.
Sam, I mean, like
The
you
guest
see what's
slash-
going
Sam,
on.
so that
Anchor-
you understand
anchor partner.
our sell the Naira data.
Excuse me. Sorry.
We have a few receivables that are coming through. Some payments that we're supposed to make that are going to be due soon. And those things will definitely hit the Naira. There's no how it is not going to hit it.
So are you asking me a question? Are you?
So
No,
can
I'm
Samson-
giving you.
Are you
I'm
telling
giving-
me what to
No,
say?
he asked me. He asked
Speak.
me what the data is for
Okay.
sell Naira now.
Okay.
So I think we are all adults, right? So consensus on a long-term structural basis.
We know
Naira
what
is a
this
short.
is.
We know
okay,
what the trade
thank you.
is.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
Right?
That's it.
Can
Wait,
we
what did he
finish the
say?
show
Repeat
now?
that. Is that what did he say? Did he say short the Naira?
No, on a long-term structural
The number
basis.
one rule.
Yeah,
Let
for
me
emerging markets,
let me
frontier markets
finish.
is-
Let me
okay,
finish.
Okay.
But then you need to look at cyclical factors.
Okay.
Boom. All right. That determine the trajectory of the exchange rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
In the short run for Nigeria right now is the flow of FPI.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Right?
No doubt.
And obviously, I think the organic demand in the economy, we just talked about current account adjustments, is much lower.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have moved from what was a illiquidity problem in January, February last year to more
absolutely.
a price discovery problem
Yes.
right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And the price discovery mechanism is not super efficient because
But
think
it's
about
getting
it.
there, it's getting
We've
there.
ran an allocative FX mechanism for nearly a decade.
Over a decade.
There are guys who have gone through multiple ranks of promotions in treasury departments in bank. They don't know how to make markets.
Wow. And on that note,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No. Let's speak. Let's speak. No.
So in a market economy,
Yeah.
you call a treasurer and say, I have $5 million of something to sell.
Yeah.
They say, hold on. They go and call flour mills. They go and call. That's not making market.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So what's making market?
They are brokers.
Yeah.
They are not risk takers.
They should be in the market. They're making markets. So they should be liquidity. There should be liquidity providers.
Should be able
They're a
to
bank.
tell you answer when you call him. This is the price I'm buying from you, Pam.
This is my two-way quote.
This is my two-way quote. This is my spread, and I know how to offload.
Yeah.
So we are in the process of that market evolution happening.
Yeah.
So because of that, the ability of the economy to absorb dollar flows is very limited, which is why CBN has to play a very important role.
Yeah.
Some people call it intervention.
Yeah.
But right now, the CBN intervention is probably not on the selling side, it's actually on the buying side.
On the buying side?
Yes.
Because of they don't want it to appreciate too quickly.
I'll give you an example. Last week, there were 12 from one bank, 8 from another bank, foreign investors in Nigeria last week.
Yeah.
Did you mention that? Yeah.
I did, but I didn't.
So there's a lot of information that goes around that particular thing. I'm not sure we want to be doing that on the show.
No. You're not going to disclose names, of course. Yeah, but we know that
of course,
there was a lot of FBI
I
coming in.
spend a lot of time trying to figure out these things because my entire view and my book is dependent on thinking about how this thing is going to play out.
How it works.
So,
yes, of course.
Have we achieved exchange rate stability? The answer is no, because you need to move market participants from the lower end of the risk curve into more risky assets.
Yeah.
We haven't achieved that.
No,
Most people who are coming,
they're coming OMO, T-bills, bonds.
They're not even doing bonds.
Yeah. Not yet. T-bills are normal. You're right. They have to move across the risk curve. Yes, it's not equities, right?
This is a natural evolution of improving a market structure.
Yeah.
So when I look at the data, right, and I see the flows from FPI, right, and I see that demand has shrunk, right? And I see reserve accretion and even the rate of, when they intervene, the rate of depreciation is not significant. It is, and then the cost of being short the Naira, because not only are you losing almost 27, 28 points on negative carry, on the exchange rate, you're probably dropping another 10 to 15 points.
Yes. Yeah.
So your net cost, right, is about 45% on your position.
Okay.
Why would you bet against the Naira in the short run?
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a quick question, guys. What happens?
No.
I'm going to answer it. What happens?
Why would you bet against the Naira?
I love it. But your a lot of basis FPI inflow, right? What happens if tariff come in and we go into a stronger dollar environment where these guys are coming in and they're looking at their dollar getting stronger, their yields are getting higher.
Let's reverse that again.
No, but this is the answer. I'm answering the question. So what happens then? What happens to this short? And this is short term.
That's what I wanted to.
So what happens? Because this is what we're in now.
And this is why, if you notice at the beginning
Sorry
of
if I was shouting in the mic.
No, it's fine. If you notice at the beginning of this conversation, I know more about Trump than is healthy. It's not because I love the guy. It's because I'm trying to figure out what happens to the dollar.
Okay.
Right. I think short-term strengthening the dollar is not going to have an impact, but I think a material strengthening in the dollar will.
We can't. What do you mean material?
Because I'll explain why. Think about it.
Okay.
Right? Nigeria has largely been decorrelated from global markets.
I talked about idiosyncratic. Yeah, but fine. Go on. Yeah,
so it has very idiosyncratic risk factors. Back to what you say.
Yeah.
At some point, we will relink as we start to engage in these reforms.
Yeah, but the FPIs are coming in. We're linking. My problem is we've been idiosyncratic only during this few months. Buhari period. I don't want to say it. Buhari. But now we're open for business.
But think about
it. So now we're linking, and that's my problem.
So the question is, we are playing what we call, you might call it a risky strategy, but this is how reform plays out, right? Obviously,
right? We're opening up to reform. We're not closing. We're not doing like China. China closed to reform. Right now, and we've opened to reform. So that's the worry.
Right now, our exchange rate stability is predicated on our ability to retain and keep FPI inflows.
Yeah,
that is
not.
Go
with that. Run with that.
It's not
it's not sustainable. It's global. That's what I'm saying. We're exposing ourselves to reform.
But think about it. If reform is successful, you start to diversify that FPI flows, and then I think we ignore what if oil price doesn't go down. So I have two nightmare scenario. Oil price at 40, and dollar DXY just
China tariff.
But isn't that our reality?
But China tariff affects oil price now.
Isn't that our reality? Like, sorry, what I mean is that every scenario for every country has realities and risks.
Yeah.
to their exchange rate, so long, except if you're the US, especially if you're a country that is largely import. I mean, you guys need a bit more gin. Let's try this.
We need it.
Guys, these guys are just down the whole one of gin. My God. Anyway,
These guys are red.
By the way, if you're just watching, this is Drinks and Mics. We do this every week. And so,
you know, when we start to record, we used to take breaks. What happens to breaks? We just go. I just realized.
no breaks.
Anyway,
no breaks.
Sorry.
So back to my point. So what I'm saying is that there is a risk.
Okay.
So long as you're an emerging market player.
Yes.
And it's even worse if you're a frontier market player.
And it's
like
even
Nigeria.
worse
Exactly.
if you're in a reform phase and you've opened up your economy to reform.
Yeah.
And that's my worry. Because when we had our idiosyncratic issues and we were just closed out, I was not comfortable, but reform should happen without you being open.
So unless you are making reform without you in, how does that happen?
Exactly.
No, but the first phases of where we are, because we can't be opening up FPI and reforming our FX markets.
But
Wait, say that again.
We can't be open to FPI and reform and trying to fix the our infrastructural issues and fixing our deficit issues.
Why though?
Because the deficit is a weaker currency.
Yeah.
Right? And using that mindset, the Naira should be weaker.
Yeah,
right?
but we've adjusted now. We've lost like almost...
Exactly. Like, the Naira is weak by over 60%. Like,
what's the price? What's the price if you haven't fixed your deficit?
So Arnold,
what's the price? What's the price? What's in the number?
My short on the Naira is that I generally believe that the price of the Naira should be about 1.7 something.
So why do you think
generally believe?
Why
You
is
see, guys, this is what I don't like.
So my question is, what is the number? Why that number? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, what's the number? What's the price?
This is my opinion. I believe that it should be about 1.7. Now,
Why?
even at that 1.7, right? On an analysis, it's still stable because it's still +5, ±5, right? So I believe should be there. But as of today, we at 1.605 or something like. What was it? What was the data today?
1.610.
No, black market is where I get from. So what?
1.5. No, but it's crossed 1.6. It's gone below 1.6.
Leave official.
1590 or 5 is 1605.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
No.
The parallel.
Parallel is still 1.6.
So parallel is what I'm talking about. 1606.
That's fine.
1606, right? So I believe that 1606 really should be about 1.715.
What happens when the FPIs leave, right? We're going to
so I expected that when they leave, that should happen.
So that is when I would short to that point.
Why shouldn't they leave?
No, they will leave now.
Okay, now because
they will come back, but they will leave.
No. There's no reason for them to leave right now.
Guys, you know why I'm surprised?
Our assets are cheap.
Why would they leave?
No. Right now, there's no reason for them to leave. But what happens when they start to see a stronger dollar? What happens when your FX loss? What happens when you're worried about FX issues? You're worried about a strong FX environment.
We talked about FX gain.
With Trump. Okay. Wait. How do FPIs? How do FPIs?
You've traded EM.
I have, yeah.
Right? Return and volatility clusters.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it is very unlikely, unless there's a botched reform process, that volatility follows volatility. We've gone through the last 2 years of extremely high volatility, significant level of currency depreciation.
But that was
to then expect that another one is right next to us. It's going against decades of emerging market data. I'm not saying it's not possible.
But how much volatility next to volatility?
Let me add one twist.
The previous volatility was man-made.
No. So guys, let's use ideology now. Let's use economic ideology. Okay.
No, but you're right. We're not thinking through.
Hold on.
Across GEM.
Let's use the economic ideology. We've all heard about the impossible trilemma.
Yeah,
we all know about it, right?
Okay.
You can have a fixed exchange rate, capital inflows,
and control of monetary
policy
at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. So now we don't have a fixed exchange rate.
Yeah.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have interest rates.
Control of interest rate.
Yeah.
And we have some interest rates are basically orthodox now.
Yeah, normal way of the way we know things to be.
No. So I don't. So the issue is this.
Why shouldn't you expect what's your fear?
Arnold said this last week. So the issue with capital inflows is that I come into the country, right? I come in at maybe I don't know, 1,605, right? Something
You're talking
happens.
about FX gains, right?
Do you get FX
So
gains
he's
by the
talking
time it
about- so I know where
comes?
he's going with
By
this.
You need to look at it
by the
from
time
both
FX
sides,
gains
right?
happen,
but
so I am thinking, okay, so I'm still at the door of entering your country, right? I'm just in, but I've already appreciated by FX.
But you
What's wrong with that?
You see something on
No,
my
there's
side.
nothing wrong with it.
But you
I'm
see
saying
something on my side.
why don't I just pull out a bit? Because there is a consideration.
I agree with Tunji.
Yeah. I mean, you can't control that now. Because you made your money.
The
I've
CBN
made
has
my
to
money.
play an active role
Because you made your
in
money
ensuring
and
that the
keeping it
currency
as
doesn't
steady as
appreciate
possible. So that's
too
that's
fast.
definitely.
I
Exactly.
agree.
So that's
I
what-
agree.
And number
Which is why
two,
you
but
said
number two,
the CBN's intervention is buy side.
buy
But
side.
number
Yeah.
two. Imagine you're sitting in New York and you're London. You hold your book is in dollars and you're an EM frontier guy, right? You're seeing some losses in your book based on you pricing your book in dollars, and Trump is hiking dollar prices. Where do you trim?
Why do you think?
Trump
Why do you
is
think?
not
wait,
hiking
Where
wait,
do you
I don't
trim?
know. I think the first question is that
Tariffs are inflationary.
Why do you
Tariffs are
think?
inflationary.
Why do you
But you
think?
understand,
Why do you
Trump
think?
is hiking the price
So
of
the
the dollar.
question is, why
So
do
we're in
you?
a strong
but
dollar
that's
environment.
So
temporary.
why
by
do
the
you
way.
think dollar
That's
strength is a fait accompli?
No,
I'll give you a
No,
scenario
I'm
where
talking
dollar
about,
weakens
and I'm talking about
significantly
short
on that.
term. So I'm talking about what do you trim? You hold Mexico, you hold Nigeria, you hold Vietnam, you hold all these countries, and your book is priced in USD. And now you're taking FX losses. You're taking losses in your position. What do you trim first? You trim the country you know nothing about.
Emerging markets.
Nigeria.
Depends on the yield
So
you're
now
getting.
FBI.
Depends on the yield you're
No.
getting.
I know.
Yes, now.
Look
Look
at that. Arnold, your position is valid. But
It's not valid.
What I think.
No, but the FX,
what I think-
FX gains is also a
What I
problem
think
as well. I'm
Ugodre
not-
is not accepting is that
Temporal.
FX gain.
Yeah, but we're talking about.
I agree on that.
If I make that cream immediately,
You're right.
I'm looking at it like, okay,
if your
yes,
loss is too much.
I could stay and still make more money, or I could just take this one now.
Okay, now I can tell the whiskey's hitting me because I'm speaking ex data.
So there's another part.
Guys,
Yeah, Samson.
So you've worked in hedge fund before. Arnold.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there is a risk-based weighting that most hedge funds use on their EM allocation.
Okay.
And one of the variables into that weighting is the 250-day volatility on the exchange rate to size the positions
Okay.
that they take.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Right? There's no surprise that everybody's in Nigeria now. Because
Yeah,
we've just hit
really.
that 250 days volatility,
Yeah,
low
yeah,
volatility
yeah,
period.
yeah.
Because we've gone from 5 to 6% monthly volatility in the
Yeah.
exchange rate to less than 1% monthly
Yeah.
volatility
Yeah,
in
we
the
have.
exchange rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Boom.
We're stable. That's what it
We
means.
And
are.
our NDF is flat on our
The
NDF
curve,
is flat. The curve is flat.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
In case that flow back
FX
ahead.
expectation.
So it's telling you that
Yeah.
telling you the foreign investors
No.
are actually
comfortable.
expecting that in 1 year out the
comfortable.
currency is going to
Yeah,
be
they're comfortable.
shifted.
Yeah, they're comfortable.
I see what Ugodre is doing.
No.
Guys, he's stressing it because we countered him on this one.
But when we spoke about it, when we spoke about it, the curve was still this way.
Guys.
When we spoke about the curve was still this way.
It's okay. I see the future. We gotta go into the last topic. I mean, there's no
one
time.
more?
There's one more. There's
Okay,
one more.
okay.
Quickly, we're not gonna waste time with this one.
Wow.
Okay, we've gone past an hour already. Time flies.
You're welcome anytime. Samson's welcome anytime. Samson, I love this.
So I wanted us to touch a little bit on startups and the startup world. There was this gist about some company. I mean, I know you guys have some kind of investment in it. I don't want to single out anyone, but I just want your views though, because
Let the guests go.
we got a lot of people. I don't also like looking at him, so I'm going to go this way.
because
So we got a lot of guys who are out there watching Drinks and Mics and also looking at some of these macro indicators and some of the things we're seeing and figuring out whether they can get investments for their businesses and all that. But I know that macro is just one side of the coin, but investors are also worried. So for some of the startups that we're seeing, are we really getting the sort of value that we expect from startups? Like, you've invested in a lot of startups. What advice would you give founders right now? Like, what do investors want to see? This is no longer like 10 years or 8 years ago or 5 years
Are you naming any names of
When
yourself?
you're just like,
you should name some names.
I know
names.
you were referring to Bento.
Yeah.
Right? For full disclosure, we used to be quote unquote shareholders in the company. I wanted to say, however, that the situation with Bento is not reflective of the broader ecosystem.
Yeah.
We've invested in in over 20 tech and tech-enabled businesses. And frankly, that is a singular issue. So 5% of 95% out of 100%, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
When you invest in startups, especially in Africa, I think there is a expectation that we basically import the Silicon Valley model of 5-year, 7-year fund lives, and that should return the fund plus returns for people. I've always been very skeptical around that because we need to build infrastructure. So the gestation period for a lot of businesses that you invest in tends to be quite long.
How long?
I think 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah. I think 10
in terms of, so what expectation? Is it in terms of dividend or in terms of...
No.
In terms of exit?
In terms of exit.
10 years?
I think for me, right, that's why we sort of use a semi-permanent capital vehicle structure to do our startup investing.
What does that mean?
So it means that I don't have 5-year life cycles that I need to return capital to my shareholders. Right.
So there's no pressure to...
So there is pressure, but the pressure is different, right? Because there are mechanisms that have been built in that allow me to kind of elongate the lives of the investment because I'm very conscious. So that's one. Secondly, we don't take this building unicorns and building hundreds of $1 million businesses as a given in the African continent. My view is Africa needs hundreds of thousands of small, well-run, valuable businesses.
Well-run, valuable businesses.
Yeah. And we can get that. Do we have the economic size? We have to remember we are talking about a continent with 1 billion people that the GDP is probably around the same size as the UK. So when you want to build unicorns all over the place, which economy is going to service that unicorn? And it's emblematic. I mean, you see that in a lot of startups that as soon as they get some traction in Africa, they are looking elsewhere. Because even they know that the market size is not that big.
So you think having unicorns in Africa is not a good thing? Like
I think it's a nice to have, but if your investment thesis is predicated around unicorns, number one, you overpay for stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So for me, like my most important thing is that what is my entry valuation? And within what I can see, can these people build a business that can generate $5 to $10 million in revenue and have a positive contribution?
So let me ask. So when you're looking at Bento, because I'm also in Bento.
Which one?
I can't disclose too much about Bento.
I'm just talking about your approach with Bento using
Why
that
can't you
idea
disclose
of
about Bento though?
No.
So I have a matter before the courts, and
so it's prejudice.
It's prejudice.
Okay. So I got into Bento when everyone got into Bento.
Yeah.
What was your outlook? So did you have the same 10-year, and where did you see it? Because I got into when it was called Verified. Verified.
Yeah.
And it was just Nigeria. They had the Pan-African vision, but it was Nigeria at the time. So did you have the 10-year outlook? Did it turn out how you planned? And what happens when a company starts to look different from what you invested in? If you invested in an oil and gas company, all of a sudden they're doing... If you invest in palm oil company, guys do here, all of a sudden they're doing rubber. Or they're doing... what happens when you can't exit? What do you do?
Well, that's why you invest in a portfolio of assets and not an individual asset. You have to face write-offs, right? So I try as much as possible to not carry, that the Pareto principle in Silicon Valley where 20% of your portfolio gives you 80% of your return. I'm very skeptical of that within the African context. So I try and ensure that I have a higher hit rate in what we invest in. But however, you kiss a few frogs, right?
Of course.
Product-wise, like the businesses that the Bento founders built, I thought were good products. Right. However, I think in the process of turning product into a company, they encountered problems. Right. And we can have a long debate, and I can't really disclose as much in terms of what the problems are. So we figured out very quickly that this was a good product, but a bad company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let me come to Tunji.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, we're all investors, but Tunji here understands startups and the challenges. Yeah. Why is he so? Because I've been seeing him
so excited. He can't hold his excitement. You know what, Tunji? Go.
So Tunji, why do Nigerian founders
Because you're a founder.
It's so difficult to turn products. I mean, founders as well, by the way. But I mean,
of course.
Why do we find it so difficult to convert
So
products
I don't
or
I
investment
don't
into
want to-
products
I don't
that
want
make
to-
money.
I don't want to speak like I know it all, but one of the few things I realized early was I'm pretty old school in the way I look at business, right? But when I came into running this particular business, the first set of mistakes I made, generally because I saw that people passed us on to go and invest in the more Silicon Valley style
Are you
businesses.
talking about me? No, because full disclosure, I passed on Alba
So
to invest in Bento.
no.
Wow.
You can't win all
That
the time.
sounds like
I should have bought the boats.
No.
I should have bought the yacht.
It wasn't just you.
Yeah,
There's a global.
boat for Bento. Is that what you're
I passed on the boat.
There's a-
There was a boat. Let me just say, there was a boat that was half the price of entry point, and I should have bought the boat.
Yeah. So there's a
Can I say
so
that
it was
live?
not just
Please
you.
cut that.
It was not just you. There was a global VC
Okay.
that looked at us and another business, and I was speaking the realities of Nigeria. Hey, people are on the streets, da 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 da, and then this person was speaking dreams.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this, and then they invested in that company. The temptation at the point was model your company to be a Silicon Valley styled business, and I started
what's a Silicon Valley style business.
growth at all rates, grow fast, grow quickly.
Deep J curve.
You
That's
know,
the fancy name.
take
Deep
risks.
Jacob, yeah.
Don't look at
What does that mean for the sake of
It
Google
means that
Trends.
you run big losses
And then
before
Exactly.
you come back.
Yeah, and everybody has that dream. So you have a graph.
Yeah.
I don't know what direction the camera's
so the
facing.
traditional African
So you-
business runs on proper EBITDA, right? From historical let's say your mom has a mom and pop shop. She thinks EBITDA. She's not thinking we need to scale around this area. She's thinking
But she's happy with
She's
it.
even worse than EBITDA. She's net profit positive.
that's not worse. That's better than every time.
so you get my point, and that's the traditional way of African thinking with running businesses. But the Silicon Valley thing, I think it messed up the way we feel or see businesses. So a lot of the businesses were really trying to scale really quickly instead of deepening markets. So I don't really know about the Bento thing. I really don't know the deeps of it. But I know that, at least for us, the mistake I made in a short term was I was trying to also mirror the Silicon Valley thing. Then I just kind of realized that
See, there's
I'm
logic.
not, I'm not built to do this. I'm not just built to say these things. I know Yanokpaja. Do you get my point?
What does that mean?
But you don't know Silicon Valley. You don't know
I don't know.
Silicon
I know I can if you drop me in Silicon Valley right now, I'll be lost. You drop me in Yanokpaja,
You can find your way.
I can find my way.
can't find my way.
Do you get my point? So this is the difference, right?
I just came back, guys.
I get that. I get that.
I just got back.
I know.
I don't think the Silicon Valley model is necessarily wrong. Per
It's
se.
not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you have a product that has product market fit
Yeah.
and positive unit economics, you want to hover up as much market share as possible.
Yeah.
Right? However, in order for you to do that, you need to have capital certainty. And you don't have that on the continent. So I would always encourage the companies that we back that I would rather you go for smaller size and profitability as opposed to scale, and you're losing money and then you can't raise your next round.
Boom,
Yeah.
guys, that's it. That's the right message. You want to repeat that? You want to repeat that, please? You rather go for
Smaller company that is profitable
than go for scale
and you run out of
lose
capital
money.
and you can't
raise
raise your
money
next
again.
round.
All right, guys, this is the time where we go to the last thing that we do on this show, which is buy, sell, or hold. Hello, buy, sell, because I gotta put these guys on the spot as I always do. So I just want buy, sell, or hold answers because
I'm buying
Arnold,
everything
you know
now.
you're always trying to explain things. I just want buy, sell, or hold. That's it. That's it.
What's the first
That's
one?
it.
What's the first one?
So we start. Trump tariff disrupting global world order. Buy, sell, or hold. Buy, by the way, means yes.
What are we buying?
Wait now. Buy means yes. It's just a term, please.
I understand.
Buy means yes, sell means no.
So you're
Gold means you're neutral.
So you're asking, does Trump tariffs disrupt the
global world order,
Not
trade
yet,
wise?
no, not
Buy,
yet,
sell, or hold.
Not yet.
Sell.
If we start to see 35%,
Buy, sell, or hold.
Sell.
Is it
I
sell?
put a model together. If you start to see 35%,
You see, guys, I told you. That's
if things start
Buy,
to
sell, or
The guy is a
hold.
proper economics. He can't make a decision.
Okay, says hold.
Buy.
Buy. Tunji. Oh, you believe it's going to disrupt? Wow.
Yeah, buy.
yeah, hold.
Buy,
hold,
sell,
hold.
hold.
Sell. I don't think it's. I don't think it's even intended to do
Sell
that.
to
How
me.
about you?
Sell.
Buy,
Sell to
hold.
me, though.
You
Sell.
don't think it matters?
All right, so we'll move on to the next one.
Oh gosh.
2025 budget. Tinubu has decided to increase the budget. We know what it means for budget
Sell.
deficit.
So, it's
Buy,
not a
sell,
good
or
idea.
hold. It's going to improve or help grow our GDP. Buy, sell, or hold.
Good question.
Oh god. I have to.
Buy, sell, or hold.
Buy, sell, or hold.
That's why I love drinks and mics. Like, you know.
That's a
So I'm connecting it. Now I have to reason it. You know.
Should we come back to you?
No, sell.
Sell.
Yeah, because for me, I'm thinking about debt servicing going up because
Sell.
of this.
Sell. Buy.
Buy.
Buy. I'm totally.
Buy for
I'm
me.
all in.
Oh,
I'm
geez.
I don't know.
all
Like,
in.
sell is
Can we
just-
start taking bets?
All my chips are in.
All your chips are
All
in.
my chips are in.
So
on this.
buy for you.
Okay.
Buy.
Buy for me, by the way.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
so we'll move on.
Yeah.
Exchange rate. Short term. Short
buy,
Short term
buy,
is
buy.
this year.
Buy.
Short term this year.
1 year,
Naira,
3 months, 6 months.
Naira stable this year. 1.5
Horizon,
between
horizon.
1.5 to 1.7.
Time.
This year, I said this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Buy,
we all
sell,
have
or
to.
hold.
We all have to sort of start buy. By the way,
Buy.
we all have to start.
Buy.
Buy.
Tunji.
Buy after selling. Buy after selling.
What does that even mean? God
You
damn
know
it.
how frustrating it is to have meetings with market people.
No, it is.
Final one, guys. Final one.
So many factors
Final
to look into.
Final
We have to
one.
actually talk things through.
Final one.
We have to
Final
connect
one.
it.
Final one.
Yeah.
Invest in an Afrobeat value chain
Yeah, that's a buy.
in Africa. Buy,
yeah,
sell,
buy.
hold. You would do that? Wow.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've
Sam,
looked into it.
buy, sell, hold,
Something I've really
Busted?
Buy
actively
also.
looked
Buy
into.
also.
Oh,
I mean,
We've actively looked into
there's
this.
even
so-
there's
that's
even the
good.
trail of even just going alongside the arches to this.
So I think for me,
buy.
the issue is just structuring, right?
Yeah,
if you can get the
If you can get
if someone can be a
structure,
structurer and structure this, and then you can
Cash
find
flow control. Cash flow
yeah,
control. If you have cash flow control, you
yeah,
can
it's
make it work.
structuring. It's
Yeah,
structuring.
yeah, yeah.
I've
All right,
looked at
guys,
this several times.
you've had my fellow drinkers on Drinks and Mics, brought to you by Naira Strengthening. It's been an exciting edition.
We don't pass 2 hours.
We had a special guest, of course. This is a special edition, and
3 hours.
thank you all for being. If you listen all through, feedback please in the comment section. I want to hear what you think about this show and these guys. Yeah, it's not easy dealing with them.
Please, we need to get
You can't
Samson
imagine
back.
what we've done today,
You know,
but it's
I
okay.
actually want to buy, sell, hold. Samson is part of the
Oh,
anchor.
yeah, let's do that.
Buy, sell,
Buy, sell,
So
hold.
every week,
Samson coming back.
buy. We all make time.
To our audience, buy, sell, or hold. You guys want to see Samson
in
again?
the comment section.
Buy, sell, or hold Samson.
Thank you guys.
Until we do this again next week, do have a profitable weekend.